when everyone's opinion becomes your prison. Imagine this, you're sitting in a coffee shop in downtown Chicago, scrolling through your phone when you see that photo you posted yesterday. Only 12 likes. Your stomach drops. You start analyzing every detail of the image, wondering what went wrong. Meanwhile, at the table next to you, someone is having a panic attack about what to wear to a work meeting because they're terrified their colleagues might judge their outfit choice. This is the reality for millions of Americans today. We've become prisoners of other people's opinions, and most of us don't even realize we're locked up. We check our phones obsessively, seeking validation from people we barely know. We change our clothes 3 times before leaving the house. We rehearse conversations in our heads, trying to predict every possible reaction. The ancient Stoics understood something that we've forgotten in our modern world. When you live your life according to what others think, you're not really living at all. You're performing. You're putting on a show for an audience that's probably not even paying attention. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled the most powerful empire in the world, wrote in his personal journal how much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does. Here was a man who literally had millions of people watching his every move, yet he understood that true peace comes from focusing on your own character rather than others' opinions. The Stoics taught that there are only 2 categories of things in life: what's up to you and what's not up to you. Other people's thoughts about you fall squarely into the second category. You can influence them through your actions, but you can never control them. When you try to control the uncontrollable, you set yourself up for endless frustration and anxiety. Think about how much mental energy you spend each day wondering what others think. How many decisions do you make based on avoiding judgment rather than pursuing what's right or meaningful? How often do you bite your tongue when you should speak up or speak when you should remain silent, all because you're worried about someone else's reaction? The Stoics had a different approach. They believed that your worth comes from your character, your virtue, and your commitment to wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline. These things belong entirely to you. No one can take them away, and no one else's opinion can diminish them. Seneca, one of Rome's greatest Stoic philosophers, put it perfectly: every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Your journey to freedom starts when you stop allowing other people's opinions to dictate your choices. The path forward isn't about becoming callous or dismissive of others. It's about understanding the difference between considering feedback and becoming enslaved by it. It's about recognizing that your happiness, your peace of mind, and your sense of self-worth are far too important to leave in the hands of people who don't really know you. 1. You're handing over your happiness to strangers. Sarah works at a marketing firm in Manhattan, and every morning she faces the same ritual. She takes a selfie for Instagram, deletes it, takes another one, applies 3 different filters, writes a caption, rewrites it, and finally hits post. Then she spends the next hour refreshing the app, counting likes, analyzing comments, and feeling her mood rise and fall with each notification. By lunch, if the post hasn't performed well, she's convinced she's ugly, boring, and fundamentally unlikable. This is what the Stoics would call the ultimate betrayal of yourself. You're literally handing over control of your emotional state to complete strangers, many of whom you've never met and probably wouldn't even like if you did meet them. Epictetus, who spent years as a slave before becoming one of history's greatest philosophers, understood this dynamic better than anyone. He taught that we suffer not from the things that happen to us, but from our judgments about those things. When Sarah's Instagram post gets only a few likes, the real problem isn't the lack of engagement. The problem is that she's decided her worth depends on the approval of people who spent maybe 2 seconds looking at her photo while scrolling through hundreds of others. The Stoics called this fundamental error placing your good in externals. They taught that there are only 3 categories of things in life: things that are good, things that are bad, and things that are indifferent. True goods are virtues like wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline. True bads are vices like ignorance, injustice, cowardice, and lack of self-control. Everything else, including other people's opinions, falls into the category of indifference. This doesn't mean other people's opinions are worthless. Some feedback can help you grow and improve, but it means their opinions have no power to make you fundamentally better or worse as a person. Your character, your integrity, your commitment to doing what's right, these are the only things that truly matter, and they're entirely within your control. Consider Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the Roman Empire at its peak. Every decision he made affected millions of people. Senators, generals, and citizens all had opinions about his policies. Foreign kings and barbarian leaders formed judgments about his strength. Yet in his private writings, he reminded himself, "Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest." The emperor understood that seeking approval from others is like trying to satisfy the ocean. No matter how much you give, it will always demand more. The waves of opinion will never stop crashing against you. Your only choice is to become unmovable, grounded in your own principles rather than swayed by external validation. Think about the people whose approval you desperately seek. In many cases, you don't even respect their judgment in other areas of life. You wouldn't ask them for financial advice, medical guidance, or career direction. Yet somehow, you've given them the power to determine whether you feel good about yourself today. Seneca observed this contradiction perfectly. How mad is he who leaves the lecture room in a happy frame of mind simply because of applause from the ignorant? Why do you take pleasure in being praised by men whom you yourself cannot praise? He's pointing out the absurdity of seeking validation from people whose opinions you wouldn't value in any other context. The social media age has amplified this problem exponentially. We're now seeking approval from algorithms and strangers who know nothing about our struggles, our values, or our real lives. We're letting our happiness depend on the whims of people who might be scrolling through their phones while sitting on the toilet, mindlessly double-tapping photos without any real thought or consideration. But here's what the Stoics understood that we've forgotten. True happiness comes from within. It comes from knowing that you've acted with integrity, that you've been true to your principles, that you've treated others with kindness and respect. These are things that no one can take away from you, regardless of what they think or say. When you place your happiness in the hands of others, you become like a puppet dancing to invisible strings. Every criticism makes you collapse, every compliment makes you soar, and you spend your entire life at the mercy of forces you can't control. The Stoics taught that this is a form of voluntary slavery. Epictetus, who knew real slavery intimately, said, "No one can harm you without your permission." This includes emotional harm from disapproval or criticism. When someone doesn't like you, they're not actually doing anything to you. They're simply having a thought in their head. That thought only has power over you if you give it power. The path to freedom starts with recognizing that your emotional state is your responsibility, not theirs. Your happiness, your peace of mind, your sense of self-worth, these belong to you. They're not gifts that others can give or take away. They're choices you make every moment of every day. This doesn't mean you should never consider feedback or that you should be indifferent to how your actions affect others. But it means you should evaluate that feedback based on your own principles and judgment, not accept it automatically because you're desperate for approval. The Stoics taught that the highest human achievement is to become truly free, and true freedom means that your inner peace doesn't depend on external circumstances, including other people's opinions. When you stop handing over your happiness to strangers, you finally become the master of your own life. 2. Why other people's thoughts are none of your business. In the bustling heart of Los Angeles, Jake, a graphic designer, finds himself consumed by the opinions of his peers. Every time he presents his work, he feels the weight of judgment hanging in the air. He worries that if his designs don't garner immediate praise, it reflects poorly on his abilities. This fear of disapproval often leads him to second-guess his creativity, stifling his true potential. Jake's story is not unique. In a world where social media amplifies every opinion, it's easy to become entangled in the web of others' thoughts. But the Stoics would argue that this preoccupation is fundamentally misguided. In their teachings, they emphasized a vital principle: worry about what is within your control and let go of what is not. The opinions of others fall squarely into the latter category. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who faced significant adversity in his life, famously remarked that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This wisdom serves as a powerful reminder that while we cannot control the judgments others make, we can control our response to them. When Jake worries about what his colleagues think, he is relinquishing his power to them. He is allowing their perceptions to dictate his self-worth and creativity, which only leads to frustration and anxiety. To fully embrace this Stoic teaching, Jake must recognize that opinions are not facts. Just because someone does not appreciate his work does not mean it lacks value. Every individual comes with their biases, experiences, and preferences, and their judgments are often reflections of their own insecurities and limitations. Marcus Aurelius, another prominent Stoic thinker, advised us to look within. By doing so, Jake can begin to understand that his worth does not hinge on external validation. Moreover, it's essential to remember that the focus on others' opinions often distracts us from our own goals and values. When we seek approval, we may compromise our authenticity. We might dilute our unique voice in an attempt to please others. This is a form of self-sabotage that the Stoics warned against. Seneca, in his letters, encouraged individuals to remain true to themselves, stating, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." In this context, craving approval from others is the ultimate poverty, as it robs you of your individuality and self-confidence. Jake could benefit from asking himself, what do I value in my work? What is my vision? By grounding himself in his principles, he can shift the focus away from the fleeting opinions of others toward his own standards. This internal compass will guide him more reliably than the erratic judgments of those around him. The Stoics also taught the concept of indifference concerning external opinions. This doesn't mean becoming apathetic or dismissive, but rather developing a healthy detachment. Just as a captain navigates through stormy seas, a Stoic remains steady in their course, undeterred by the tumult of outside influences. By practicing indifference to others' thoughts, Jake can cultivate resilience and fortitude. It's also worth noting that the fear of judgment often stems from our own insecurities. When we're deeply concerned about how others perceive us, it often reveals our internal struggles and doubts. This is where self-awareness becomes crucial. By examining why we care so much about others' thoughts, we can begin to address the underlying issues at play. The Stoics emphasized the importance of self-examination as a pathway to wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This statement encapsulates the essence of Stoic philosophy. When Jake reminds himself of this truth, he can reclaim his power. Rather than fixating on how others perceive his work, he can focus on honing his craft and expressing his creativity authentically. Furthermore, the Stoics encouraged individuals to practice gratitude. By appreciating what you have and recognizing your strengths, you can shift your mindset from one of scarcity, fueled by the fear of judgment, to one of abundance. Gratitude fosters resilience, enabling you to weather criticism without losing your sense of self-worth. Imagine Jake starting each day by reflecting on what he's grateful for in his creative journey. He might write down his accomplishments, his skills, and the joy he derives from creating art. This simple practice can help him cultivate a positive mindset, making it easier to brush off any negative opinions that come his way. The Stoic exercise of negative visualization can also be beneficial. By imagining the worst-case scenario, such as receiving harsh criticism, Jake can prepare himself emotionally for potential outcomes. This practice reduces the shock and pain of criticism, allowing him to respond with composure and clarity. When he realizes that he can handle whatever feedback comes his way, he strengthens his resilience and commitment to his own values. Ultimately, the journey toward not caring about others' opinions is a path toward self-empowerment and authenticity. It requires a conscious effort to embrace the Stoic principles of self-control, self-awareness, and inner strength. Rather than being swayed by the winds of public perception, we can choose to anchor ourselves in our values and principles. Jake can transform his relationship with feedback by recognizing that others' opinions are merely that, opinions. They don't define him, his work, or his worth. By focusing on his creative vision and remaining true to himself, he can cultivate a sense of freedom that comes from knowing he is enough, regardless of what others think or say. In doing so, he will find that the weight of judgment becomes lighter, and he can fully engage in the creative process. With the wisdom of the Stoics as his guide, Jake can reclaim his happiness, knowing that it lies within him, not in the fleeting thoughts of others. 3. When someone dislikes you, it's really about them. Imagine walking into a bustling cafe in Seattle, where you overhear a conversation at the next table. Two friends are critiquing a mutual acquaintance, expressing their dislike for her style and behavior. As they laugh, you can't help but feel uneasy. You start to wonder if they've ever spoken about you in a similar manner. The fear of being judged and disliked by others creeps in, and suddenly you feel vulnerable. This scenario plays out daily in countless lives. The reality is that when someone reacts negatively to us, it's often more about them than it is about us. The Stoics understood this inherently, teaching that others' judgments are usually reflections of their inner turmoil rather than accurate assessments of our character. Seneca, a prominent Stoic philosopher, once said, "We are more concerned about our reputation with others than about our character." This insight highlights how we often internalize others' opinions, leading us to question our worth based on their fleeting judgments. When someone dislikes you, they might be projecting their insecurities, fears, or personal issues onto you. This understanding can shift your perspective and diminish the emotional weight of their opinions. Let's consider the case of Lisa, a teacher in a public school in San Francisco. She has always received positive feedback from her students and colleagues, but recently received a harsh critique from a parent. This parent publicly expressed dissatisfaction with Lisa's teaching style on social media, causing Lisa to question her abilities and feel disheartened. Instead of spiraling into self-doubt, Lisa could benefit from applying Stoic principles. The first step is to recognize that the parent's opinion is not a reflection of her worth or teaching ability. It is a reaction rooted in that parent's perspective, possibly stemming from their own frustrations or expectations. As Epictetus wisely stated, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This means that while Lisa cannot control the parent's feelings, she can control her response. When faced with criticism, the Stoics encouraged self-examination. Lisa can ask herself, what is valid in this feedback? Is there merit to it? Or is it simply an expression of that parent's frustrations? By distinguishing constructive criticism from mere negativity, she can grow from the experience without allowing it to define her. Moreover, Marcus Aurelius, another cornerstone of Stoic thought, emphasized the importance of focusing on our own actions and intentions rather than being overly concerned with others' perceptions. He wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." This means that Lisa can choose to detach her sense of self-worth from the parent's opinion. Instead, she can concentrate on her dedication to her students and her growth as an educator. Understanding that dislike is often a projection can be liberating. People dislike aspects of themselves that they see reflected in others. For example, if someone feels insecure about their parenting skills, they may lash out at a teacher who challenges their expectations. By recognizing this, Lisa can cultivate empathy rather than resentment. She can view the parents' comments not as personal attacks but as reflections of their struggles. This Stoic perspective doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it allows us to maintain our composure in the face of negativity. Instead of reacting defensively, Lisa can choose to respond with compassion and understanding. This might mean reaching out to the parent to discuss their concerns, not out of obligation but out of a desire to clarify and improve the situation. In addition, the Stoics taught that opinions are transient. The judgment of one person in one moment does not define our entire being. Just as the weather changes, so too do people's opinions. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that so many who were remembered are already forgotten, and those who remembered them are long gone. The opinions that feel so crucial today may fade into obscurity tomorrow. Understanding this can diminish the power that others' words hold over our emotional states. Let's explore another example. Consider David, a software engineer in Austin, Texas. He recently presented his project to his team, but one colleague was particularly vocal in criticizing his approach. David felt deflated, thinking that the criticism meant he had failed. However, applying Stoic principles, he could step back and analyze the situation. Firstly, David should recognize that his colleagues' criticism could stem from their own insecurities or competitive nature. Perhaps they felt threatened by David's innovative approach, leading them to react defensively. This understanding can help David separate himself from the sting of the critique and view it through a more objective lens. Next, David can ask himself whether there is any truth to the criticism. Is there a valid point he can use for growth? If so, he can take that feedback and use it constructively. If not, he can choose to let it go, recognizing that he cannot control how others perceive his work. Being aware of our reactions to criticism is crucial. The Stoics believed in the practice of self-reflection to cultivate self-awareness. This could mean journaling about experiences where individuals felt judged or disliked. By analyzing these moments, we can identify patterns in our responses and learn to adjust our reactions over time. Importantly, the Stoics also advocated for maintaining a sense of community and connection. While they emphasized personal virtue and integrity, they did not suggest complete withdrawal from social interactions. Instead, they encouraged building relationships based on mutual respect and understanding, where constructive feedback is welcomed, but excessive criticism is discarded. In conclusion, when someone dislikes you, it's often about them rather than you. By applying Stoic principles, you can detach your self-worth from external judgments and focus on your actions and intentions. Recognizing that others' opinions are reflections of their internal struggles allows you to respond with empathy rather than defensiveness. As you navigate relationships and criticisms, remember the wisdom of Epictetus. No one can harm you without your permission. By choosing how to react to others' judgments, you reclaim your power and maintain your inner peace. Embrace the freedom that comes from understanding that their negativity does not define you. Instead, focus on your values, your actions, and the person you aspire to be. 4. You're not as important as you think, and that's freeing. In the sprawling metropolis of New York City, amidst the hustle and bustle, lives Mark, a young entrepreneur striving to make his mark in the competitive tech industry. Each day, he faces the pressure to be noticed, to stand out, and to be seen as important by others. Mark often finds himself consumed by thoughts of how he is perceived by his peers and potential investors. He spends sleepless nights worrying about whether his ideas are good enough, whether he'll impress the right people, and whether he'll achieve the success he so desperately craves. However, the Stoics would challenge Mark's perception of importance. They understood that our significance is often exaggerated in our minds. The truth is, we are not the center of the universe, and this realization can be incredibly freeing. In fact, it can pave the way for a more authentic and fulfilling life. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, wrote about this perspective in his Meditations, stating, "You are a tiny piece of the universe. The universe is vast, and you are but a small part of it." This awareness can serve as a humbling reminder that while we may feel important in our own lives, the reality is that the world continues to spin regardless of our individual achievements or failures. When Mark believes he must be significant in the eyes of others, he burdens himself with unrealistic expectations. He feels the need to constantly prove his worth, which only leads to anxiety and stress. The Stoics teach that by recognizing our place in the grand scheme of things, we can alleviate the pressure we place on ourselves. This understanding allows us to focus on what truly matters: our character, actions, and the impact we have on those around us. Consider the vastness of the universe. When you gaze up at the night sky, filled with billions of stars, it becomes evident how small we really are. This cosmic perspective can help us detach from the significance we attach to our daily struggles and concerns. In the grand timeline of existence, our worries about being liked or esteemed by others fade into insignificance. The Stoics also emphasized the concept of indifference to external validation. They taught that true happiness and fulfillment come from within, not from the approval of others. When we seek importance through external measures such as accolades, wealth, or social media followers, we become trapped in a cycle of dependency. We relinquish our power to others, allowing their perceptions to dictate our self-worth. Seneca, another prominent Stoic thinker, argued that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. When Mark worries about how others view him, he is engaging in a form of self-inflicted suffering. He imagines that people are scrutinizing his every move when, in reality, most individuals are preoccupied with their own lives and concerns. The truth is, they're likely not thinking about him nearly as much as he believes. To break free from this mental prison, Mark must learn to redirect his focus. Instead of fixating on how he is perceived, he can concentrate on his values and principles. What does he stand for? What kind of impact does he want to have? By grounding himself in his core beliefs, he can navigate life with purpose and authenticity. A powerful Stoic exercise is reflective journaling. Mark can take time each day to write about his thoughts, feelings, and experiences. He might ask himself questions like, what truly matters to me, and am I living in accordance with my values? This practice not only fosters self-awareness but also cultivates a deeper understanding of what it means to be truly significant, not in the eyes of others but in his own life. Moreover, the Stoics taught the importance of focusing on the present moment. When we dwell on the past or obsess over the future, we distract ourselves from living fully in the now. Mark can practice mindfulness by engaging in activities that bring him joy and fulfillment, whether it's spending time with loved ones, pursuing a hobby, or simply enjoying nature. By immersing himself in the present, he can break free from the shackles of societal expectations and rediscover the simple pleasures of life. Another valuable lesson from Stoic philosophy is the acceptance of impermanence. Life is fleeting, and our time on this earth is limited. Instead of striving for significance, we can embrace the beauty of each moment and the connections we make along the way. This mindset shift allows us to appreciate the journey rather than fixate on the destination. Mark may find solace in the idea that he does not need to prove his worth to anyone. He can choose to live authentically, free from the constraints of external validation. The Stoics understood that true strength lies in being true to oneself, regardless of others' opinions. This does not mean disregarding constructive criticism, but rather filtering it through the lens of personal values and goals. As Mark begins to internalize these principles, he may notice a shift in his perspective. He'll likely feel less pressure to conform to societal expectations and more empowered to pursue his passions. His worth will no longer be measured by others' opinions but by his commitment to living a virtuous life. In the end, the Stoic path to understanding our importance, or lack thereof, is not about diminishing our self-worth. Instead, it's about recognizing that our true significance comes from how we treat ourselves and others. It's about living with integrity, empathy, and purpose. When we release the burden of needing to be seen as important, we open ourselves up to a more fulfilling existence. We are free to explore our passions, connect deeply with others, and contribute to the world in meaningful ways. So, as Mark reflects on his journey, he can find comfort in the Stoic teachings. He can embrace the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, who reminds us that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. By focusing on what truly matters and letting go of the need for external validation, he can cultivate a sense of peace and fulfillment that transcends the fleeting judgments of others. 5. How people-pleasing kills your true self. In the vibrant streets of Chicago, where the hustle and bustle never seems to cease, lives Emma, a young professional working in public relations. Emma is known for her friendly demeanor and her ability to make others feel comfortable. However, beneath her cheerful exterior lies a troubling truth. She constantly sacrifices her own desires and beliefs to appease those around her. Whether it's agreeing with a colleague's ideas in meetings or altering her plans to fit her friend's preferences, Emma finds herself drifting further away from who she truly is. Emma's struggle is not uncommon. Many people wrestle with the desire to please others, often at the expense of their own happiness and authenticity. The Stoics understood this phenomenon well and provided profound insights into why people-pleasing can be detrimental to our true selves. Seneca, the renowned Stoic philosopher, articulated a vital truth: the greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which relies on tomorrow and not on today. When we prioritize others' approval over our own needs, we become trapped in a cycle of dependency. Our self-worth becomes contingent upon external validation, and we neglect the most important relationship we have, the one with ourselves. Emma often finds herself caught in this cycle. She fears confrontation, believing that disagreement will lead to rejection or conflict. However, the Stoics teach that true strength lies in being authentic and standing firm in our beliefs. They remind us that we cannot control how others respond to us, but we can control our actions and decisions. The first step in breaking free from the people-pleasing trap is recognizing that it diminishes our authenticity. When we constantly seek approval, we lose sight of our values and desires. The Stoics believed that living in accordance with our nature and principles is essential for a fulfilling life. As Epictetus wisely stated, it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. This means that if we believe we must please others to be accepted, we close ourselves off to the possibility of self-discovery and growth. Let's consider a scenario. Emma is invited to a dinner party where a friend has organized the guest list. She knows that several attendees will be discussing topics she finds uninteresting and even disagreeable. Despite her reservations, Emma forces herself to attend, fearing that declining the invitation would disappoint her friend. Throughout the evening, she nods along, pretending to agree while feeling increasingly disconnected from her true self. In this moment, Emma is neglecting her own needs for the sake of maintaining harmony. The Stoics would encourage her to reflect on the importance of her own values and boundaries. It's essential for her to recognize that saying no does not equate to being unkind, rather, it reflects a commitment to her own authenticity. The Stoic practice of self-reflection can help Emma navigate these situations. By taking time to assess her feelings and motivations, she can uncover the reasons behind her desire to please others. Journaling can be a valuable tool for this reflection. Emma might write about her experiences and the emotions that arise when she feels compelled to conform. Through this process, she can gain clarity about her values and the importance of honoring her true self. Another powerful Stoic principle is the concept of indifference to external opinions. The Stoics taught that we should not allow the judgments of others to dictate our self-worth. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, emphasized that you have power over your mind, not outside events. This means that Emma can choose how she reacts to others' expectations. By focusing on her own integrity and self-definition, she can cultivate a sense of freedom from the need for approval. Emma can also benefit from examining the motivations behind her people-pleasing behavior. Often, this tendency is rooted in fear of rejection, fear of conflict, and fear of being unloved. By acknowledging these fears, she can start to dismantle their hold over her. The Stoics believed that facing our fears is a crucial step toward personal growth and resilience. For instance, if Emma fears that saying no will lead to her friends abandoning her, she can challenge this belief by reflecting on her true friendships. Are her friends genuinely supportive, or do they only value her when she conforms to their expectations? By evaluating the quality of her relationships, she can make more informed decisions about where to invest her time and energy. Additionally, the Stoics encouraged individuals to practice self-compassion. Emma must be gentle with herself as she navigates these changes. It's natural to feel uncomfortable when breaking free from the habit of people-pleasing. She can remind herself that it's okay to prioritize her own needs without feeling guilty. Developing self-compassion allows her to embrace her authentic self without the burden of self-judgment. As Emma learns to assert her boundaries, she may encounter resistance from others. Some may express disappointment or confusion when she no longer conforms to their expectations. However, the Stoics teach that the opinions of others do not define our worth. In fact, by living authentically, Emma may inspire those around her to do the same. Her courage to be true to herself may encourage others to reflect on their own behaviors and priorities. The journey to authenticity is not without its challenges. Emma may face moments of doubt and fear as she navigates this path. However, the Stoics remind us that growth often comes from discomfort. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the things you think about determine the quality of your mind. By focusing on her values and intentions, Emma can cultivate a mindset that prioritizes authenticity over approval. Ultimately, the Stoic path to overcoming people-pleasing is about reclaiming one's identity. It involves recognizing that our worth is inherent and not contingent on external validation. Emma can embrace the idea that she is enough just as she is without needing to mold herself to fit others' expectations. In conclusion, people-pleasing can stifle our true selves and hinder our personal growth. By applying Stoic principles, Emma can learn to prioritize her values, set healthy boundaries, and cultivate self-compassion. The journey toward authenticity is empowering and liberating, allowing her to forge deeper connections with others based on mutual respect and understanding. As she embraces her true self, Emma will find that life becomes more fulfilling. She will no longer feel the weight of trying to please everyone around her. Instead, she can engage with the world authentically, knowing that her worth is defined by her character and choices, not by the fleeting opinions of others. 6. Stop wasting your life on what others think. In the heart of Miami, where the sun shines bright and the pace of life never slows, lives Carlos, a 32-year-old marketing executive who spends an alarming amount of his day consumed by what others might think of him. He checks his phone obsessively, analyzing every social media interaction. He rehearses conversations before important meetings, not to improve his ideas, but to avoid potential criticism. He changes his clothes multiple times each morning, worried about how his appearance might be judged by colleagues he barely knows. Carlos represents millions of Americans who are unknowingly squandering their most precious resource: time. According to recent studies, the average person spends over 6 years of their life worrying, much of it focused on the opinions and judgments of others. 6 years. That's more time than most people spend in college, learning a new language, or building meaningful relationships with their loved ones. The Stoics understood the devastating cost of this mental habit. Seneca, who lived through the political turmoil of ancient Rome and witnessed how quickly fortunes could change, wrote extensively about the brevity of life and the importance of using our time wisely. He observed that life is long enough if you know how to use it, but most people waste their days on trivial concerns that have no bearing on their character or happiness. Consider what Carlos could accomplish if he redirected the mental energy he spends on others' opinions toward meaningful pursuits. He could learn a new skill, deepen his relationships, pursue a passion project, or simply enjoy the present moment without the constant anxiety of judgment. Instead, He's trapped in a cycle of worry that produces nothing of value while consuming his most irreplaceable asset. The Stoics taught that time is the one thing we can never recover. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling the most powerful empire in the world, regularly reminded himself of life's fragility. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." When we spend our days worrying about what others think, we're not truly living. We're existing in a state of perpetual anxiety, always preparing for an imaginary audience that may not even be paying attention. Think about the last time you made a mistake in public. Perhaps you stumbled over your words during a presentation or spilled coffee on your shirt. How long did you agonize over that moment? How many times did you replay it in your mind, convinced that everyone would remember and judge you for it? Now think about the last time you witnessed someone else make a similar mistake. Chances are you barely noticed it, and if you did, you forgot about it within minutes. This disconnect reveals a fundamental truth that the Stoics recognized. We vastly overestimate how much others think about us. Most people are so absorbed in their own lives, their own worries, and their own concerns that they have little time or energy to focus on our perceived failures. As Marcus Aurelius noted, "So many who were remembered are already forgotten, and those who remembered them long gone." Seneca understood this principle intimately. Despite being one of the most prominent figures in Rome, he recognized that even his reputation would eventually fade. He wrote, "You live as if you were destined to live forever. No thought of your frailty ever enters your head. Of how much time has already gone by you take no heed. You squander time as if you drew from a full and abundant supply, though all the while that day which you bestow on some person or thing is perhaps your last." This isn't meant to be morbid but liberating. When we truly grasp the finite nature of our existence, we begin to see how absurd it is to waste our precious days worrying about the fleeting thoughts of others. Every moment spent in anxiety about someone's opinion is a moment stolen from joy, growth, creativity, and connection. The Stoics practiced an exercise called memento mori, remembering death. This wasn't about becoming obsessed with mortality, but about gaining perspective on what truly matters. When Carlos remembers that his time is limited, suddenly the opinion of a stranger on social media seems less important than the conversation he could have with his daughter, the book he could read, or the walk he could take in the beautiful Miami sunshine. Consider the mathematics of worry. If Carlos spends even 30 minutes each day concerned about others' opinions, that's over 180 hours per year, more than 4 full work weeks. Over a lifetime, this adds up to months or even years of mental energy that could be channeled into something meaningful. The Stoics would see this as a form of voluntary slavery, where we imprison ourselves in thoughts that serve no constructive purpose. Epictetus, who knew real slavery firsthand, taught that we become enslaved when we allow external things to control our inner peace. When we worry about what others think, we're giving them power over our emotional state, our decisions, and ultimately our lives. We become reactive rather than proactive, defensive rather than creative, anxious rather than confident. The path to freedom begins with a simple recognition. Other people's opinions are not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to live according to your values, to treat others with kindness and respect, and to contribute positively to the world around you. What others think about these efforts is entirely beyond your control and therefore not worth your mental energy. This doesn't mean becoming callous or indifferent to feedback. Constructive criticism from people you respect can be valuable for growth. But there's a vast difference between considering thoughtful input and obsessing over every possible judgment. The Stoics taught discernment, the ability to distinguish between what deserves our attention and what doesn't. Marcus Aurelius practiced this discernment daily. Despite having millions of subjects whose opinions could affect his rule, he focused on his own character and actions. He asked himself whether he was acting with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, the four cardinal virtues of Stoicism. If he could answer yes, then he had fulfilled his duty, regardless of what others might think. As Carlos begins to apply these principles, he discovers something remarkable. When he stops worrying about others' opinions, he actually becomes more likable and respected. Authenticity is magnetic. People are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin, who act from principle rather than fear, who are present in conversations rather than anxious about perception. The time you save by not worrying about others' thoughts is time you can invest in becoming the person you want to be. It's time for growth, for joy, for meaningful relationships, for pursuing your passions. It's time for living, not just existing. 7. Why you're the only expert on your own life. In the bustling tech hub of Austin, Texas, lives Rachel, a software developer who constantly finds herself second-guessing her decisions based on the advice and opinions of others. When she's considering a career change, she polls her friends, family, and colleagues, collecting a dozen different perspectives. When she's choosing an apartment, she seeks input from everyone she knows. When she's deciding what to wear to an important meeting, she asks for validation from her roommates. Despite having a sharp analytical mind that excels at solving complex coding problems, Rachel has somehow convinced herself that others know better than she does about her own life. This phenomenon is more common than we might think. In our hyper-connected world, we're constantly bombarded with advice, opinions, and judgments from people who have only a surface-level understanding of our circumstances, values, and inner world. We've become so accustomed to seeking external validation that we've forgotten a fundamental truth the Stoics understood deeply. You are the ultimate authority on your own existence. Marcus Aurelius, who had access to the greatest advisors, philosophers, and counselors in the Roman Empire, still recognized that the most important insights came from within. He wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." This wasn't mere philosophical speculation, but practical wisdom born from experience. Despite having countless people offering him guidance on ruling an empire, Marcus Aurelius understood that true wisdom comes from honest self-examination and inner reflection. The Stoics taught that each person possesses an inner faculty called the hegemonikon, the ruling principle of the mind that governs our thoughts, decisions, and actions. This inner guide has access to information that no external observer can possess: your deepest values, your authentic desires, your past experiences, your fears, your dreams, and the subtle nuances of your emotional landscape. When Rachel seeks advice from others, she's essentially asking people who lack this crucial insider information to make decisions about her life. Consider what happens when Rachel asks her colleague about whether she should pursue a promotion. Her colleague sees only the external aspects: the salary increase, the title change, the additional responsibilities. But Rachel knows things her colleague doesn't: how the extra stress might affect her anxiety levels, how the longer hours might impact her relationship with her aging parents, how the corporate culture conflicts with her personal values, and whether this particular type of work energizes or drains her. These internal factors are invisible to outside observers but crucial to making the right decision. Seneca understood this principle when he wrote about the importance of self-knowledge. He observed that every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end, recognizing that true transformation must come from within. When we constantly seek external validation for our choices, we're essentially asking others to live our lives for us. We're abdicating the responsibility that comes with being human, the responsibility to think, choose, and act according to our own judgment. This doesn't mean that all advice is worthless or that we should become completely isolated in our decision-making. The Stoics valued wisdom and recognized that others can offer valuable perspectives. However, they distinguished between gathering information and surrendering judgment. When Rachel asks her mentor about industry trends or her friend about their experience with a particular neighborhood, she's collecting data that can inform her decision. But when she asks them what she should do, she's giving away her power to choose. The Stoics practiced regular self-examination as a way of developing this inner wisdom. Marcus Aurelius would spend time each morning and evening reflecting on his thoughts, actions, and motivations. He would ask himself questions like, what did I do well today? Where did I fall short of my values? What can I learn from today's experiences? This practice of introspection helped him develop confidence in his own judgment and reduced his dependence on external validation. Rachel could benefit from adopting a similar practice. Instead of immediately seeking others' opinions when faced with a decision, she could first spend time in quiet reflection. She could ask herself, what do I really want in this situation? What are my core values and how do they apply here? What does my past experience tell me about what works for me? What would I regret more, taking this risk or playing it safe? The Stoics also understood that self-knowledge requires honesty about our own limitations and biases. Epictetus taught that we should be aware of our own ignorance and work to overcome it through careful observation and reflection. This means Rachel should acknowledge when she genuinely lacks information or expertise and seek appropriate guidance. But she should also recognize that she's the only person who can weigh all the factors, both external and internal, that will determine whether a decision is right for her. One of the most liberating aspects of accepting your role as the expert on your own life is that it frees you from the impossible task of pleasing everyone. When Rachel seeks advice from multiple people, she inevitably receives conflicting recommendations. Her parents might prioritize financial security, her friends might value adventure, and her colleagues might focus on career advancement. Trying to satisfy all these different perspectives is not only impossible but also leads to decisions that don't truly reflect her own priorities and values. The Stoics taught that we each have a unique role to play in the grand scheme of existence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "In the morning when you wake up, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They're like this because they can't tell good from evil." While this might sound harsh, the deeper message is that each person must find their own path to wisdom and virtue. Others can't walk this path for us, just as we can't walk it for them. As Rachel begins to trust her own judgment more, she discovers something remarkable. Her decisions become more authentic and satisfying. When she chooses based on her own values and insights rather than others' expectations, she feels more aligned with her true self. She may still make mistakes, but they're her mistakes to make and learn from. This ownership of her choices leads to greater confidence and self-respect. The journey to becoming the expert on your own life is ongoing. It requires patience, practice, and the courage to trust yourself even when others disagree. But the Stoics understood that this inner authority is not just a right but a responsibility. By accepting this responsibility, we honor our capacity for reason and our unique perspective on existence. Your freedom starts when you stop caring. Picture yourself walking through the streets of downtown Denver on a crisp morning. feeling lighter than you have in years. You're not checking your phone every few minutes, not rehearsing conversations in your head, not wondering what the person behind you thinks of your outfit. For the first time in a long time, you're simply present, simply yourself, simply free. This is what awaits you when you finally stop caring about what others think. It's not about becoming callous or indifferent to the world around you. It's about reclaiming the mental energy you've been pouring into the bottomless pit of other people's opinions and redirecting it toward what actually matters. Your character, your values, your growth, and your contribution to the world. The Stoics understood that true freedom isn't political or economic, it's psychological. Epictetus, who lived as a slave for years, discovered that external circumstances couldn't imprison his mind. He taught that we become truly free when we stop allowing things beyond our control to dictate our inner peace. Other people's thoughts about you fall squarely into that category of things you cannot control. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, found his greatest freedom in the simple recognition that his worth didn't depend on the approval of his subjects. He wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does." This wasn't about becoming isolated or antisocial. It was about understanding that your happiness, your sense of purpose, and your inner tranquility are too precious to leave in the hands of others. When you stop caring what others think, you discover who you really are beneath all the masks and performances. You start making decisions based on your authentic values rather than fear of judgment. You speak your truth, pursue your passions, and build relationships based on genuine connection rather than people-pleasing. The path isn't always easy. You'll face moments of doubt, times when the old habits of seeking validation creep back in. But remember Seneca's wisdom: every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Each time you choose authenticity over approval, you're ending the old pattern and beginning a new chapter of freedom. Start small. The next time you catch yourself worrying about someone's opinion, pause and ask, is this person's judgment more important than my own peace of mind? Practice the Stoic exercise of focusing on what's within your control, your actions, your responses, your character, and let go of what isn't. Your journey to freedom begins with a single step: the decision to stop giving others the power to determine your worth. You are enough exactly as you are, regardless of what anyone else thinks or says. If this message resonates with you, I encourage you to subscribe to the Stoic Vivu channel, where we explore how ancient wisdom can transform modern life. Hit that like button if you found value in today's discussion, and share this video with someone who might need to hear these timeless truths. Together, we can build a community of people committed to living authentically and finding freedom through Stoic principles. Remember, your freedom starts the moment you stop caring about what others think. The Stoics showed us the way, now it's time to walk the path.